And welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm joined by Dr. Calvin Vallier. And he is Professor of Philosophy and Director of Research at the Institute of American Constitutional Thought and Leadership. He joins us today to talk about a series of issues, but I want to begin with the recent pivot in his area of research. Kevin, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well, thank you.
I'm very glad to be able to reconnect with you. I get to reconnect with you at least once a year.
Yes, this is year 3, I think.
Year 3, that's right. So, in the past, you and I have talked about questions on post-liberalism, integralism. Can we just briefly touch on that? But from there, I'd like you to share how you've made a pivot in some of your areas of research and why that is.
Yeah, so I take it that what the Catholic post-liberal is trying to do is recover what they see as an underemphasis in liberal democratic societies on the common good, and the way in which particularly liberal ideology, liberal political doctrines, but also to a lesser extent liberal institutions have been poisonous to the common good. But it's not just the common good as a generic category. It's not merely the temporal common good, but their unique emphasis is on the duty of states, at least under the guidance of the church, to promote the supernatural common good, to advance corporate salvation in Christ. And so their call was towards a more sacramental and liturgical political form. And I found this compelling in the sense that it sounds pretty good.
On paper.
But I also had a lot of worries about what would be required in order to achieve it. And my view ultimately in my work, in my 23 book, All the Kingdoms of the World, was that even if things went well, even in ideal theory, there would be 2 problems. One, the system probably wouldn't be stable given the human tendency to pluralism, even if we could get there. And also, it would be very difficult to avoid imposing religious coercion on the unbaptized. And so I think functionally, even an ideal integralist regime would be unjust. But on top of that, there's a non-ideal problem, which is transitioning to integralism would require massive injustice on Catholic terms, because it would require the suppression of pluralism. Now, there's much more going on in the book, because I also defend integralism and give what I regard as the best arguments for it. I think there's a nice argument from church history and doctrine. And I also think there's a case to be made that if, as Catholics think society should promote the natural good, they also have reason to think it should promote supernatural good because of the union between those two goods. And so that was roughly the book, is I assessed the arguments for and against integralism. And as I see it, Catholic integralism is sort of 200-proof post-liberalism. The post-liberals say we should be promoting the common good and resisting liberal atomization. But the integralist says the only way to do that is for the Catholic Church to guide the state's development. However, in recent years, a number of things have happened that I thought would energize post-liberals, but did not. And this in particular was the vice presidency of J.D. Vance, who is good friends with Patrick Deneen, appeared at who's a post-liberal but not an integralist, who has appeared at his book launch, and knows all the arguments, is very familiar with it. And I thought that would indicate a noticeable post-liberal presence in the administration that's been absent. It's been absent on the permissive policy towards the abortion pill, which has shocked me. It has been absent in Vance's comments on the Pope. For instance, telling the Pope that he should focus on morality, not politics. I mean, he sounds like JFK. And for someone who knows all their arguments, who's obviously brilliant, anyone who watched the vice presidential debate knows that, to simply repeat the most liberal arguments about the role of the papacy in public life. I mean, this is someone who understands the argument. He knows that the purpose of the Pope speaking out on war is for the salvation of souls, right? For people to be involved in promoting an unjust war is a danger to the salvation of souls. The Pope has a solemn duty to act in this way. He knows that. He's telling the Pope and Catholics, well, he shouldn't be doing this. There could be nothing less integralist about that. And so it made me realize that they're actually a lot less influential than I thought. If even one of their most well-educated men takes power, which was their whole goal, and the American post-liberals anyway, the British, were less optimistic about worldly politics. If they got their friend as vice president, and even this happened their influence and power was much less. So then the question was, well, who is getting all of their policy? Who is getting everything they want out of this administration? And the answer is Peter Thiel and the tech right. They've gotten no regulation of AI. And lately, the only AI company they have regulated is the one that's the most left-leaning, Anthropic. And so what I started to think about was, well, if we're worried about threats to kind of liberal constitutionalism, and not liberal in the sort of autonomy or progressivist sense, but in the classical liberal sense, it would be very interesting if it was coming from the people that were against regulation and that were in many ways libertarian. And so I needed to start thinking about the technology that they were producing that was giving them more wealth and power. Because initially I was at least thought they were fellow travelers. And so I started to think about the development of AI and its sort of political economy. And I started working in 2024 on modeling it and trying to think about what's actually transformative about AI and what isn't, because I think there's a lot of confusion about it. And so
a lot of the discussion has even the discussion itself has been quite ephemeral.
Yes, it's irrelevant in some ways because the people critical of AI don't understand how the tools actually work. And so they can't actually be effective critics of it. And that's partly understandable because the technology is improving faster than any technology ever. And so it's very hard to track the developments. But I just decided, and I told the Lord this long ago, I said as a Christian political philosopher, I just said, look, if something like the internet comes along, I am not going to allow the church to be dominated by another technological advance the secularists control. I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian. This happened to the Orthodox Church in Russia, and it created probably 1 million martyrs because the Marxists quote unquote understood political economy. And then they could offer something that the Orthodox Church did not know how to respond to. And I said, look, I'm going to understand this, and Christians have to co-govern this technology. And luckily, Pope Leo and I converged. I mean, not that I'm smarter or better than him in any way.
He called you up and consulted on
No, in no way. But I was very heartened by Magnifica. Because I think that Pope Leo has the same view. And in the project I'm working on now, I think there's a huge amount of harmony. And so many of your listeners will be much more familiar with Magnifica. But I can frame what I think in light of what he thinks. What people, I think, there are a couple of things I think people don't understand about Magnifica. One is it's a work of political philosophy, not of ethics or metaphysics. And the reason for that is very much in line with Leo XIII. And the message is this: if we don't understand power relations in the new economic order, we won't even be able to address the other questions because they'll be shut down by the people who control capital and power. And I think what Leo is saying is that, in effect, because I think part of this is written to the AI companies. Otherwise, there wouldn't be that long summary of Catholic social thought in it.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
It's long.
And it's very obvious, too. He's reiterating things we've already known for a long time.
And one thing he's trying to do there is build Francis into the tradition. But he did it in, I think, an ingenious and wildly underappreciated way. So I think he has an anthropological argument that begins with the common Catholic premise that human beings flourish through knowledge of the truth. Then he says the truth is complex, but we're still oriented towards it. It's hard to know if we don't dialogue together. So instead of talking in a vague way about the goodness of dialogue, like Francis often did, he's saying there's an anthropological orientation towards truth, and that requires co-governance. And the critique of the AI companies is that their way of governing the technology, not the technology itself, their way of governing the technology is incompatible with human flourishing as the church understands it. Because we cannot discover truth alone. That's the problem with Babel. And that's why he didn't use the analogy of Pentecost. That's why he used Nehemiah instead. Nehemiah is a collaboration among different perspectives. It isn't just the church. Because Leo's view, and this is an anthropological argument, is that humanity as such, our natural end, is to co-govern in this way. AI companies is, you can bring this technology into the world and the Catholic Church can allow it. But what we cannot allow is for you to control it.
Let's pause right there. We're going to take a short break. Kevin is going to keep talking with us about this reality of AI and, frankly, human flourishing, thinking about a human person rightly, and a Christian co-governance of this emerging technology. He's professor of philosophy and director of research at the Institute for American Constitutional Thought and Leadership at the University of Toledo. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. And we're back. I'm talking with Dr. Kevin Vallier. He is professor of philosophy and director of research at the Institute of American Constitutional Thought and Leadership. And right now we have zoomed in on Pope Leo XIV's thought on this emergent technology that is artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the necessity of co-governance, not just by technocratic institutions, but necessarily by Christian institutions, therefore Christians in general.
And so I think that the critical thing here, and this is a problem for the post-liberals, is they say, look, natural law orients us towards truth, but they tell us almost nothing about how truth is known and discovered, about how the common good is understood and discovered, right? And here is where the classical liberal tradition is stronger. Because classical liberalism, as I see it, from Adam Smith forward, is a theory of collective intelligence.
That's right.
It's how we figure out things together. And even though Leo has a little dig at the invisible hand in Magnifica, and he's more on the democratic side of collective intelligence, he's saying the way that we learn things together is interactively and under the right set of rules. Now, I think we're free to disagree with the Pope about which particular institutions empirically are best at co-governance. Because I see markets like he does, as he sees democracy, as systems of accountability.
Yeah.
I think democracy is part of accountability. It's just an incomplete picture.
Yep.
But that's a throwaway line in Magnifica. There's no issue there. But the issue is that because we are oriented towards the truth, we have to share power with those we think are incorrect. And this reconciles brilliantly a tension in the Catholic tradition between error having no rights, but the erroneous having rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people with time will appreciate what Leo's trying to do, because it's a long document. And I think that he's trying to, and perhaps at too much length, pack a huge amount of his own thinking on this, but it's extremely rich. And I would just encourage people to be prepared for revisiting it so that new insights come out of it.
Yep.
But so part of the reason that this is a problem for the post-liberals is that once you realize that our co-discovery of truth is part of our human nature, they're committed themselves to theorizing about collective intelligence. Here's how this connects back to AI. My project currently is trying to develop a theory of artificial collective intelligence, because the artificial intelligence theorists tend to be social scientists, not social scientists, rather, natural scientists and computer scientists. They think if you get the program right or the brain right, you know everything there is about alignment and oriented the technology to human flourishing. Whereas those of us who study economics knows that's barely the beginning.
Yep.
Because you can drop a nice person into a nasty situation and they have to be nasty to survive. We have to get the rules of interaction right, and we have to understand systems of collective intelligence, not only among AI agents, but among humans. The tradition of political economy is going to be more important than ever. We're trying to organize society in a way that collective intelligence, both the genuine form that we see among humans and then the functional behaviorist form that we see in artificial intelligence, so that it's oriented towards the good and collective discovery.
Yep.
And the reason that AI can help us is the extent to which it advances our ability to connect with one another and promote the good in light of its ability to help us discover truth. And the ultimate, I think, Catholic and also Eastern Orthodox attitude towards AI should be, is we have to develop a culture and policy that enables artificial intelligence to expand what is human and to advance our nature as free and reasoning beings. And it's clear to me that the way to do that is not to refuse to use the tools. Because if we refuse to use the tools, the transhumanists will use the tools.
Right.
And there were many well-meaning Marxists, and when we let them dictate political economy, they killed us. And the transhumanists would do, and I'm being very serious, the transhumanists will do the same thing. They're well-meaning,
Yep.
and if they have all the power, they will hurt the church. That's just what happens. It corrupts human beings, and then they hurt the church, right? And I'm not saying all Christians should use AI. I'm not saying even beginning to say that. But what I am trying to tell the church is we need to make allowances for people to, some subgroup of Christians, to learn the tools extremely well so that they can be capable of co-governance because they understand how the tools work.
Yeah.
And it's extremely important that we recognize that some Christians have a vocation to co-govern this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that if we just punish everyone who uses them, because they use it, we're actually doing a disservice to the church. We're making it harder for the church to withstand this revolution, because the last industrial revolution was intellectually monopolized by the secularists. And so part of my message to the listeners is, if you know someone who's doing genuine research with AI, as opposed to just slop or, it's doing its homework for them, as Leo says not to allow it to do, but to recognize we have to distinguish between good and bad uses. So essentially, that's kind of how I transitioned, but why I also think that Christians understanding AI means both maintaining an independence from it, but also a familiarity with it, right? Not being governed by it. And this is a way in which I expand on a Christian understanding and even an ancient understanding of the intellectual virtues. I'm developing an account of the intellectual virtues that I call cognitive sovereignty, which is the stable disposition of human reason to govern artificial reason. We've always known that part of our freedom is reason mastering the passions. That's something both of our traditions emphasize very heavily. But now there's something besides the passion in other human beings that can hollow us out, and that's mechanized reason.
Yes.
And so how do we learn to preserve human reason in a world of expanding mechanized reason? One thing might be, don't touch mechanized reason. That's not the right response.
No.
It cannot be.
Well, we can't escape it.
That's right. And it's just like many Catholics and Orthodox saying, well, this whole Industrial Revolution thing, we shouldn't go along with it, right? Like, you can say that, and I'm glad there are people that maintain a pastoral existence and we have to protect them. But we know what happened to a largely agricultural society that was behind the Industrial Revolution, and people who went around saying, let's enjoy the fruits of this, and here's how to do it. We know what happened, 1 million martyrs. So I am bound and determined that that is not going to happen again. And my main message to Christians right now is to say, like, let's not repeat that error. Let's be wary of the problems, but also not be reflexively hostile to it.
Yeah. More and more, I've been at the forefront of a lot of this AI conversation as well, and frankly, just teaching on Magnificat Humanitas. And the criticisms that are coming levied towards the Pope demonstrate to me that people haven't spent enough time with the document to see where his mind is coming from and what he foresees in the future.
Yes. The big worry is, and you could tell this because the main reason I'm still on Twitter is to follow AI news, because that's where all of it breaks. And watching the reaction to Magnifica was to focus on paragraph 99, which is just the one on, well, AI isn't true human intelligence. They weren't willing to ask themselves, are we accumulating too much power? And while the AI companies say things towards this, even they understand they're not going to unilaterally do the right thing because their commercial incentives don't go that way. I think Anthropic has made some good choices in this regard, better than OpenAI and certainly better than XAI. And DeepMind, is probably better than OpenAI, but worse than Anthropic. But they can't do it alone. And so we have to think very hard about, and this is, I think, Pope Leo's call, is to think very hard about what feasible co-governance looks like.
Yeah.
And I think it has to involve both democracy and the market. And I don't know the best combination of things. But my piece that I'm trying to add is to take the tradition of political economy, which in many ways is the theory of collective intelligence, and to apply that theory of collective intelligence to AI. Because I think if Adam Smith was right about human agents, he's right about AI agents too.
Yep. The principles are still sound and applicable.
Yes.
Well, Kevin, time always flies when I speak with you. Thank you so much. That was not only brilliant, I really hope we can continue this conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much.
My guest has been Kevin Vallier, Dr. Kevin Vallier, Professor of Philosophy and Director of Research at the Institute for American Constitutional Thought and Leadership at the University of Toledo. And we've been essentially talking about the necessity of people of faith, the church, really engaging in the co-governance of the development of AI technology. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.